Trauma often distorts our view of ourselves. Today, Dr. Phoenix talks to us about how to be comfortable in our skin, no matter what we've been through.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to today's episode of the Permission Slip podcast. I am your host, Nicole Morris. I am the author of the transformational release book, It's Not Me, It's You. Take their labels off. And we are giving people permission to take everybody's labels and expectations off. This is the first season. We're wrapping up the first season of the podcast, the inaugural season. And it's been very groundbreaking for me, including my guest today, who I am so beyond excited to have her here for a number of reasons. Now, I'm going to let her tell you who she is. But before we do that, I'm going to tell you who she's been to me. Dr. Phoenix. Well, she has Pamela Charity. I know has Dr. Phoenix. I call her Doc P. I call her all the things. But she has been somebody who has been pivotal on my personal journey to self-acceptance and even dealing with the topic of conversation today, which is permission to just be. And I am incredibly grateful for her. We're going to do a little bit of storytelling today, a little bit of transformation sharing on our experiences together. But before we get into that, welcome, Dr. Phoenix.
Hey, Nicole.
Well, say hey to the audience. Tell them who you are. You are not a person that tells people who you are, what you do. You just kind of have this. It's very ninja like. So, but I need you to take a second and just talk about who you are and what you've been doing, because you've been impacting lives for multiple decades. So, talk a little bit. Yeah, talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I am that doctor that works under the radar because I don't need all that, all the accolades, the pats on the back. I love to do the work. It inspires me. Plus, I'm an introvert, so that doesn't help, me wanting to tell everybody what I'm doing. But I am a mother of two boys, grown boys, and I now have two wonderful granddaughters. Yay! Now that is the story right there.
Right there.
Go from boys to now granddaughters.
Girls.
Yes. Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. So I'm an author of 3 books. Charity's Vegetarian Paradise, back in the day, That Girl Can Cook, and Sankofa Rites of Passage, which is on Amazon. I think and I have a lot of publications because, when you're a doctor, you got to do them publications and stuff like that. I'm also a therapist as well as a naturopathic doctor. And Nicole we were definitely friends before we started doing the work. We actually met on a cruise, didn't we?
And that's where I was going. That's why you are so perfect for today, because you are the embodiment. You are the embodiment of the topic, right? So I remember when we first met on that cruise, and we were doing.
I don't even know what else yet.
I was facilitating a session on mirror work. You remember, that cruise was just. It was an interesting experience from around the way, and that's definitely how we clicked.
We like to use that I word. Interesting.
We did. Listen. And I remember, so we were doing mirror talks, right? And I talk about mirror talks in the book. So guys, the book's behind me. Just, I got to drop my subs, right? But I was facilitating a session on mirror talks, and I thought you were just so dope because you got in the mirror and you've been comfortable in your skin since then. I feel like that was 20, almost 15 years ago, 2013, 2012, something like that. It was a long time ago. And you got in the mirror and you were like, blah, blah, blah. It was something like that. You're like, I just like to be silly. I just like to be I loved it because even in that moment, for the people who were ready to absorb that, you were actively demonstrating a level of self-acceptance that a lot of the attendees of that cruise were seeking.
Mm-hmm.
So talk a little bit about your journey to being so comfortable with yourself, and then we're going to lead into how you have been helping us and some of the things that you've seen in some other conversations. But how did you get to that, even to this place, right? Where, she's so understated herself. This woman has been in the community for decades, in school, in organizations. She is having impact you got here because you give it out, right? You give it out to so many people. How did you get there?
Yeah, that's a good question, Nicole. Like, I have to think about it because even you talking about this cruise is so funny to me because all I remember, a lot of what I remember is us being at the comedy club and you standing up and you were cracking up. We were laughing. I don't remember exactly everything in that workshop, but there were a lot of women that really needed to get comfortable with themselves, because, I guess, well, I know this as a people, we walk around not really being transparent, with our representative on doing things that are acceptable and also oftentimes people pleasing. And so from the start, like I went through the rites of passage many years ago because I'll just tell my age, I'm 62. And I went through a rites of passage almost 40 years ago. And when I went through that rites of passage, like the traditional therapy for me didn't necessarily work. And I needed something deeper to understand, like, who am I? Why am I even here? What am I supposed to do? And I'll tell you, Nicole, since I was 10, I was also adopted, and I was adopted by a family member. And, we know all adoptions don't go well, right? So I
Uh-huh.
remember being 10 and asking God, who are we? Why are we? What are we doing? Are we just doing the same things over and over again? So I was just a peculiar type of child. And I remember saying at 10, I got to do everything on my own. Nobody owes me anything. And I know that's very strange, but so the family I was with, families hold a lot of secrets, right? There's a lot
Uh-huh.
of secrets within families. And so I am clairvoyant. Now I know I'm psychic. I'm all those things that I didn't know at 10, but I did feel like something here is not right in this family. Something's not right. And I started having dreams. And so I graduated from high school at 17. And I remember feeling like I really still don't know what's going on. So that summer, I went to Chicago to see my grandmother and my birth mother. I mean, I didn't know I had a birth mother. You know what I mean? Yeah,
Wow. Okay.
right.
Okay. That's deep.
Her daughter, walking down the street in Chicago, 51st Street, and we got to on 50th and King, and she says, "Well, you're not Jesse and May's daughter. You don't even look like them." And I'm like, "What?" So yes, and it's in my book. It's in the Sankofa for Rites of Passage. I write about everybody I needed to forgive in the book. I call her my evil stepmother. I do call her that because I needed to give name to the pain.
Got a demon seed in my book, so
Yeah. Yeah. I was just writing my own truth though.
right.
Okay. But so I learned that the summer before I went off to college. So, you imagine how crazy I thought I was. You
Wow.
mean everything that I thought is not, and you're telling me you're my mother. So yeah. So that happened to me my freshman year at college. And I went to a HBCU. I went to Kentucky State University. I had a full scholarship. I was a basketball player. So I was just down there going through the motions of trying to figure it all out. Like, I don't know who I am. I have no idea. And also the different sides of the family were fighting, right? Not literally fighting, but like,
No,
why
but
didn't
but
you ask
but
your
come on,
son?
because this
Now
is
you
like
know,
how
all
people
of
are
that.
living every day. Like we all these years I've known you, Doc, I never knew your story.
Yeah, yeah. And like I said, I wrote a lot of it in the book because when I moved from Chicago 5 years ago to Ohio, and my birth mother passed in 2015. So that's when I finally felt like I could leave Chicago because I'm her only daughter. I'm her only child. So I always took that as my responsibility to make sure that she was okay, right? Even though it was tumultuous, after you learn something like that, you're wondering like, why did you give me up? What happened? And then there's so many secrets and so many things on each side. I literally felt like when I was from 17 and then I graduated college at 22, and then 2 years later I'm pregnant and I'm living in Chicago. So now I'm trying to figure out, I'm culture shocked because I come from a small town in Kentucky right outside of Fort Knox.
Mhm.
And big difference than the big city of
In
Chicago, right?
Chicago, like, for sure.
So it took me about 2 years to get used to living in Chicago and understanding people, right? Because I'm, I'm in Kentucky, it's country. Hey y'all, how y'all doing? You don't do
It's not that it's like, why, like, he bumped me again.
right. I'm already a quiet person anyway. So I'm already observing how I need to be to survive, right? I graduate college,
Mm,
I go back to Chicago. No. After I graduate Chicago, I go back to Chicago. But you know how you have a big gap between you finish your requirements for school? Cause I really could have came out in 85, but the summer 85. But what happened was they only have one graduating time. So that whole from 85 to 86, I went into the military.
okay.
That's,
Okay.
yeah, I went
I
into
didn't know that. I didn't
Right,
know
I
that you
went
was
into
in
the
the military.
military, which is really crazy anyway. I mean, I did serve. I served 8 years Army Reserve, and I was still floating. But you know how, as women, what we do, even though we're struggling, we're still. I got to be responsible for myself, so I got to keep moving. So I went into the military. I did basic AIT. I was in Alabama and then North Carolina. And then I came back to Chicago to be around my birth mother. And that was hard, because you still have questions about what happened here. And then you also have people in your life, like my grandmother, whose name is Charity. I'm her namesake, and she was my heart all the time. And you don't want to disappoint your grandmother, but at the same time, you cannot sweep your emotions under the table. Like, I'm dealing with some real deep, like, what? You just want me to sweep it under the table, act like I've been here all the time, all these years? I'm like, I can't do that. And I know that was, like, as a people, we don't deal with our emotional and mental health a lot. So when I asked my grandmother and mother my birth mother, to go to therapy, they said, no, I'm not crazy. You crazy. You go to therapy. I'm not crazy. Nobody wanted to do nothing, but I needed that, right? So anyway, just going back to trying, doing your best to be who you are, your authentic self. So in 1997, I met Dr. Bambadi Shakur, and I went through her rites of passage. Okay. And so going through that rites of passage allowed me to go back a year before I was born. It's very spiritual. It comes out of Ghana, and you understand, like, okay, what it was my purpose. What did this earth call me into? Why did I want to come? And what did this earth need when I came on that particular day? Because that's how it's done within the rites of passage. So you go back and you study the historical, what was going on in the world. You also talk to your parents and ask them, like, a year before you were born, when you were conceived, what was going on in their mind,
Mm-hmm.
because what's in their mind and on their heart affects the womb. You
Yes,
know what I mean?
deposited. It's deposited.
It's
Absolutely.
all right there. And so when I got to those questions, and that was very difficult because I had to talk to my birth mother. You know what I'm saying? And that was hard for her. And she was very tearful as I was writing down what she was saying. Like maybe your mother's age and maybe her mother, during those times, people, it was about.
We had to just push it down. Like they had to just push it down. They couldn't.
Exactly.
There was no space to.
Especially for women. Especially for women. The way the women did, and some people still today, they love the boys, they raise the
They
daughters.
raised
And my mother's told me that she never felt like that she was worth anything, because she had two brothers. They both were older than her. And in a sense, when men grow up, sometimes they just lead a family. They don't even look back. They didn't really look back for their little sister.
Yeah.
And
Come on.
yeah, true
Can
story.
can we say that I have a little sister who feels that way about a big brother who
Mhm.
but that's a
Yeah,
separate conversation, but
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. So she never felt good, but she always, like my grandma, her mother, she always felt like she had her doing things for them and everybody else. And she never felt really truly loved. And so she told me she started dressing up like a boy so that she would get that attention. Isn't that crazy? just to get the attention. So one time I just dressed up
And
like a
so
boy.
now okay, so now I'm kinda putting it together, right? That you understood from your mother, just even in terms of how she birthed you, there
Mhm.
was a she didn't feel acceptable to her own self, to anybody around her,
Mm-mm.
and she births someone whose whole purposeful seek is to know who they are and live authentically from that place, including coming back with her.
Yeah, because I'll tell you, that's a good way to put it, Nicole, because what I felt when I met her, let me say when I met her, I always knew her, but
You just didn't know who she was.
I knew her as my
Ooh.
aunt. So you understand how this goes from she's my favorite aunt. She comes down to Kentucky and she hangs out, she buys us stuff and woo 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 and she's so nice to me. She's nicer to me than these people because I also lived in a family, you see my complexion, it was a problem for them. You think you
Especially
better
being
than
in the South.
you think you
Especially being
better than
in the
us because
South
you got
because
that
of
light
fair
skin,
skin.
you
Oh,
know.
wow.
I'm a child. I don't even know the difference. You know what I'm saying? So I had
Yeah.
to bear that burden in that family because everybody in that family was chocolate, was dark, beautiful, but they had a problem with me. And I look like my grandmother, right? I don't look like them at all. So, I mean, it's so many ways I could talk to you about this
So
story.
many layers.
Yeah, the greatest thing is that I was able to, as a young person, understand that I needed to, read things that was inspiring, like Susan Taylor. I always read In the Spirit. It always was motivating. I had to memorize things to constantly, because we're responsible for ourselves, no matter what happens to us. We still have to build
100.
from within. So, I would read this one poem, promise yourself to be so strong that um, that nothing can hurt your mind, to talk health, happiness, and I can't remember exactly, but just build other people up and be just as happy for other people as you are for yourself. So that made me like a sister. Like my friends are my sisters because I don't have any brothers and sisters. And yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I could get lost in the story because you're right. It is a lot of layers. And when I tell this story, I usually only tell this story at people's request. And then when my clients need a particular story, to help them process what they're going through. So that's probably why it never came up with you, Nicole, because that's
I
not what
I had all other stuff.
we had a whole bunch of other stuff.
I had a bunch of other stuff. I didn't have that stuff, but I had other stuff.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
thing is, and you hit on so many things, like I actually legitimately, I had to stop so I could take notes because it was so many. I missed like 4 things. I'm like, I'm gonna remember that because I'm gonna come back to that. And I was like, shoot, it keeps leaving. So let me pull up my laptop here so I can write down so we can come back to, to some of this stuff because it's so layered and it's in this conversation where people you just laid out an incredibly traumatic foundation, right?
Hmm.
And
And
yet
a lot of us come from trauma, a lot of deep trauma.
exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. And yet you sit here a whole, powerful, peaceful, peacefully contagious spirit.
Well,
No, honestly, it is, and it's even coming through the screen.
aw.
It is peacefully contagious and confidently and comfortably contagious that all of those layers and all of those things, like I can imagine people from adopted families hearing your story and saying, and it doesn't have to make me show up in a damaged way later because there is nothing about who I've ever experienced you as, forget even know you to be, who I've ever experienced you as in 15 years. There's nothing about any of that where you have ever bled your trauma onto me. You
Mm.
have not showed up that way in these space. And I know everybody's human, so I'm not saying that you're perfect at all. And I
Yeah.
don't, but I'm just saying,
No,
like,
just say I'm perfect. No,
some people, you know what I'm saying, they can't help but spill. And so I could hear the
mhm.
person who found out that their aunt maybe was their mom. or some other huge secret in the family that got buried that, is still affecting how they see themselves today. And you completely took control of your narrative about who you were going to see yourself as. Now, you did it during doing a bigger like purpose seek, but the magic behind everything you excuse me, behind everything you just shared and who
Mhm.
you are today is that you took control of that. And like you said, you knew at a really early age, you knew that you had to be your answer. And so it's funny, I was talking to my son, so my babies, all my babies, my mom, my sister, my nieces, like,
Yeah,
everybody.
so beautiful ones. I think I've talked to almost all of them.
I believe you have actually in one form or another.
Yeah, you have a beautiful
And
family.
thank you. And so I was actually talking to my youngest son today, and I was talking about my daughter. And Octavia made a decision when I started moving around the country in the pandemic, and I'm gonna learn how to stop saying my baby's names because people might actually know me one day, and then they're gonna be trying to find my babies. So I'm gonna have to figure out. I'm gonna train myself. But I was I was talking to my baby, and when I started moving around the country in the pandemic, and the shift that I had to go through to take my power
Yes.
back from
Yeah.
everybody around me,
Lots
it
of pivots. Lots of
lots
pivots.
of pivots. But
Yeah.
what it
Yeah.
also did, which I go into the book and we'll go into in these conversations on the podcast, when I did that, it destabilized everybody around me because I had positioned myself as their anchor.
Yeah.
It was their anchor in a
Everybody
depleting.
was dependent on you. Mhm.
Absolutely.
In
And
some way,
so
yes.
And when I did that, my daughter decided that she was never gonna allow that to happen again. Now, I don't know if she knows that that's what she decided, but if I look at her today, how she lives her life, she anchors to things. But her substance and what she's gonna let be true to her,
Mhm.
she does all of that on
Mhm.
her own. And
Yeah.
then my youngest son is the opposite, where he'll be 20, right? So maybe he's supposed to. So we'll see how he continues to evolve.
Right.
He still prefers to anchor to me. And I'm
Mhm.
like, you gotta go. And
Mhm.
not you gotta go like you gotta go get out and go struggle and go get it. I'm not saying you gotta go get it out the mud,
Mhm.
but you have to know who you are, regardless of who you think I am.
Yeah.
And regardless of who I am to you, because at some point, number one, I'm not going to be here, regardless of how long that is. But
Yeah.
number two, every time you give your definitions, the ability of something else to define you to something outside of yourself, when it shifts, you will shift too.
Mhm.
And so I'm hoping that he embraces that at some point. Again, he'll be 20, so I think he's got some time, but
Yeah.
it's just important, and a lot of people, they aren't comfortable just being their own anchor, and they may choose not to, right? The whole purpose behind this podcast and the conversations like this is not necessarily to drive my perspective or how like I think we should all live empowered or whatever. It's to drive awareness so that like you might want to choose to be anchored, but then make that conscious choice. And you're gonna deal with that versus be a victim or be powerless or anything like that.
Yeah. I like what you're saying because, from early, from when they're like toddlers, you start to me, you start teaching them about what it means to be a clear thinker. You
Yes.
know what I'm saying? I think the thinking that you can problem solve it yourself, you can figure out, but you also can ask questions, but you just keep moving in it. It's interesting because I remember when I was teaching second grade while I was getting my doctorate, and these children, they were all over me. I was I'm in there substitute teaching. I'm teaching them about aromatherapy and I'm doing a little bit of just a little bit of color therapy. I'm doing things that they're interested in, and they
Mhm.
was like, I think at that time I was married to my Ghanaian husband. So it was like, Mrs. Lamptey, why did you leave the army? And I said, well, why did you leave kindergarten? And it was so funny because it just came to my head. I was like, what's the quickest way I can get them to understand?
Make them get it.
Not be up here trying to explain to them, the military has a limit, in
Yeah.
your life,
Yeah.
So I was trying to, but I think this every stage of our life, ages and stages, there's something new to learn,
Yes.
and the independent, you know, uh, Dr. Joe, was it Joe Dispenza says either you're going to be a victim or you're going to be a creative. You're either going to create what you want or you're going to sit back and be passive, like, and let it happen to you. So we're not doing that. We're taking control of everything. And just as an African American, I mean, I also study Pan Africanism, and I'm definitely have studied the Nguzasawa Ma'at principles. And so, Kuji Chagalia says we define who we are. You know what I'm saying? We have to define and we have to take that control. Because to give it to someone outside of you means that you also will probably blame someone outside of you too.
Absolutely. Is it
Yeah.
easier so because you have seen lots and lots and lots of people, why would somebody anchor to like, why would they hear a conversation like this and decide that they don't want to be in control? In your experience, what's been some of the driving thoughts or things that has made a person either consciously or even unconsciously decide,
Yeah,
"I'm gonna stay here."
mhm. But I think sometimes people don't wanna be responsible and accountable because it's just easy if I follow, but it's really not when you really know how life is. I do understand that some people do have anxious attachments to people,
Mhm.
right? And so even if it's our child or our mates, we want them to get to a secure attachment, right? And secure means that you're confident in
I
yourself.
say, what's the difference? Help us understand the difference, because somebody might have it and not know what to call it. They just know when they get around this person, they feel better. And so if they're not around, you know what I'm saying? Like how would somebody
Yeah.
has that even know? Like what could they pay attention to?
Well, well, with my clientele, like, there's a lot of people right now who have been sad or, depressed, angry, or just anxious moods, right? But the anxious attachment is like let me give you an example. Like if I'm calling someone every 10 minutes because where are you at? Or just following a person's location. It's like, well, you didn't see me 3 hours ago. I'm exaggerating, but it's like people that wanna see
Oh, but
people.
but 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 100% people do that. People do that.
Yeah. "Oh, I thought you were gonna be here. You're not here," the location. And to me, all that stuff really a lot of the social media stuff, the phone attachments, all of that kinda, enhances, heightens that anxiety. But I really feel like we all need to work on our own confidence and also learning how to love ourselves and be complete within ourselves. I see this in relationships all the time. Somebody comes around, they might put a Band-Aid on whatever wound you have, and it's good until it rips off a little bit. So when you talk about being your own anchor, I remember somebody said, you know, Dr. Phoenix, you're not the leaves, you're the tree trunk. You're solid. I was like, yes, we
Period.
all need to be solid. Like the wind blows or somebody might scream and the leaves may fall off and wave, but that tree trunk right there. You know what I'm
It's
saying? And so the goal to me is always be the tree trunk. And that means doesn't mean like, oh, I'm gonna be so hard or I'm gonna be so soft. It means you're gonna be balanced. It
Well,
means
and
you're
it
gonna,
means that I'm gonna be my own stability.
yeah, and I'm gonna be
Whatever
balanced.
that
So
means.
if I feel too far over to the right, I'm gonna breathe. I'm gonna do my sound bowls. I'm gonna do my meditations. I'm gonna do my tapping. I'm gonna massage my foot. I'm gonna get some work done so I can get back balance. And most of all, I'm gonna be in tune to the Most High God
Mhm.
all the time. And I'm gonna be listening. So that energy can pour into me because a lot of times people want to get that energy from each other. I think what's the book that talks about how people drain each other's energy and leave each other depleted versus energized. Like our exchange is reciprocal. It's in my eye, and so we leave here on a higher vibration.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
for me, sometimes you gotta sit here and do something like this, just breathing thoroughly. Because a lot of people breathe thoracically, not diaphragmatically, and it's like, "Now what?" You know?
We gonna have to bring you back for some practical application. I'm not joking. I'm so serious. But
You have to do that.
I wanna go in a little bit of a different direction too, because
Okay, okay.
I'm gonna well, no, but I wanna tell on myself a little bit because I think it's a different perspective of anchoring.
Okay, yeah.
One of the things I didn't do, I didn't necessarily anchor to another person. I anchored to work.
I know you were gonna I could have just said that right with you.
Yeah. I anchored
Yes.
to I was like, "You know what? The work, if I do work, whether it's at work for somebody else or work for myself, I felt like the work had outcomes that I could control always."
Mhm, mhm.
So, I actually used working, and I'm grateful, right? Because I could have picked a million other coping mechanisms that would not have me sitting here today.
Yeah. You
But
could have decided not to work.
I could decide not to work. Addictive personalities, more addictive
Mhm.
traits is definitely in my genealogy. So I have an addictive I have addictive tendencies, right? But it is
And you've had a lot of good jobs too.
yeah. Well, and it's so look, so I got to be addicted to something that was fruitful and productive. And but it was what I anchored myself to because I felt like it was the only sure thing. The people weren't sure around me. The people weren't safe. The people, or I was responsible for them. So, like my relationships, my familiar relationships and things like that, while they were full or plentiful, I look back now and they were codependent or some other kind of just not symbiotic. I don't want to overstate the negativity of it, but it wasn't healthy and it wasn't healthy for me. And I
Mhm.
knew even without saying it, I knew it didn't feel safe. I knew it wasn't safe because it didn't feel good, right? It didn't feel it felt familiar, but it didn't feel like you said we leave on a higher vibration.
Mhm.
My higher
Familiarity, complacency.
well, yeah, and it was superficial too, right?
Mhm,
Because it's a
mhm.
higher vibration, maybe because it's a material accomplishment. But it's not a higher vibration like
Yeah.
the ones I was talking to you about before we went live, where like,
Mhm,
man, this is amazing. And so grateful that I've got to have that experience with that particular relationship at this point. I'm just beyond
mhm.
grateful to God. But I wanted to talk a little bit. I wanted to kind of go. So when I said go in a different direction, because it's going to be for some of those people too that they anchor to work or they anchor to because the people weren't safe and instinctively I just knew they weren't safe because I was always fighting and I was
Mhm.
like, well, who want to do that?
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
want to do that. So I'm going to go over here where there's no fight and then I can be excellent over here and then I can and then the feedback comes back until it stops because that feedback from those works from that job was always controlled by another person.
Okay. Right, right. Yeah, I mean, I think, for women, because there's a lot of really intellectual, super smart, super loving women. I think there's two things. I think people anchor to school and they anchor to work. They anchor to a lot of things. But I think the safety in work is that at least we gonna have some money in this house.
Hello, practical terms, right?
Right, right. So the anchoring doesn't even seem like you're anchoring because you like, hey, I got to be on my hustle, right? But I also think that when you're going through tough times in your relationships too, that you anchor to outside things. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah.
Because I remember when I my first marriage, well, my only marriage, because anyway, but
Uh-huh. Shut
yeah, I married somebody from another country. I met him in West Africa, and then probably a year later he came to Chicago, and you had to get married within 30, 40 days. It's the fiance visa type of thing. But I
uh-huh.
went to Africa. I went to West Africa twice, and figure, okay, he's the right one, I guess. I really shouldn't have got married. Let me just say that.
And hello, we can like say that too, right? Like we get to a point where we got to tell the
Mhm.
truth, and the other thing is we got to tell the truth for the next generation.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. But
yeah,
I'm glad you're saying that, Nicole, because I talk about this all the time amongst friends. I'm a jokester, so I think laughter is very healing.
absolutely.
So I shouldn't have got married, but I did, and my youngest son, Elijah, is a blessing. He's 25. So even though you shouldn't do something, God will change it where it's still a blessing, right? I also was grieving before I got married. My grandmother had passed. Well, my grandmother passed 30 days later. I went to Africa. I went to Ghana for the second time. So that's a whole story within itself. But I married, I had a wonderful son. The marriage was what it was. I had given it. I'm the type of person like, it's not really working. I'm not going to stay in this no 10, 15 years and be miserable. I need to figure it out. My mother kept saying, how long are you going to be in this? He not really, she was just talking a lot of stuff because nobody really liked him like that. And I told her, I said, I'm going to give it 2 years and I'm going to see what's up, you know? But I also am a person too. Because no, I'm not doing this. I'm also a very free spirit. So
Yes.
for me, the type of person I am, I felt like being married to him, that marriage was highly overrated for me. And the reason why, and this is for the younger generation, because if you're not kindred to the person that you marry, like equally yoked, and you don't build on solid things before you get married, and there's no way we could have possibly built and dated like we were supposed to date. He was in Ghana, I'm in Chicago. So we were, the phone calls, the letters, yeah, you all happy and, oh, this is my man, all that. Girl, please, because that's, pretty is as pretty does. Okay. That's why I would tell people, we had a beautiful wedding, all of that, and everybody, oh, y'all so cute together, y'all fine. But no, it just wasn't, it was very, for me, it wasn't that it was extremely negative. It was no, like, people say, oh, they cheated. No, it's none of that. It's just the cultural differences was way, way too much. And I'm getting to a point. A lot of times as people, not even just women, we choose people in a sense that that we need to rescue or save, right? If a person isn't, for a sister, if a brother is not on your level or higher where he can pull you up, or at least you start here, you don't go down and pull somebody up as a woman. And that was a mistake.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But he also represented differently too. But as soon as you find out, you got to get out.
Not the representative. She said, no, but she said 2 years. 1, 2, just 2 the finger.
I'm not desperate. No. So yeah. So 7 years later, because he fought it for a long time, and 7 years later, I did get divorced.
Child.
And yeah, it took that long. It did. And then he tried to take me back to court. Now, this might be too personal to appeal the divorce. I was like, I am not going back to that courthouse. It's not happening. They're gonna have to find me in Canada or something. Look, the bailiff, me and the court reporter, because he didn't show up for the divorce, and the judge was like, well, what do you want? Do you want to go back and be Pamela Charity Tate? Or do you want to keep your name Lamptey? His name was Lamptey. And I was like, no, I want to go forward and be Phoenix. Because my cousin had just given me, and I'll share it with you, I'll send you a picture of it, a poem about, because she, when I was first born, I lived with her family first before my mother's other brother adopted me. So they were all in shock too that I left that family, because back then we didn't do anything right. Black people did anything. Emotions, look, food, shelter, clothing, loving with hungry, self-actualization, your emotions, that stuff didn't matter. We are just probably 5-10 years in with honoring emotions.
Honestly.
And if you look at my website, that is my thing. The way you feel matters. The way you feel now, right now, not tomorrow, not the next day. People be like, oh, I'm gonna get back to you. No, I need to be whole right now. We come from wholeness, we return to wholeness. So, I wanted to be balanced in that moment, and emotions do matter. And that's why I got my doctorate, and my concentration is in emotional wellness, because that's a piece that as a society we have been neglecting for so long. We'll deal with our physical, maybe a little mental, they look crazy, but our emotions is like, shove them under the table. Person died, you got 3 days or a week. Go for it.
To 2 years.
And grieving is not linear. So we know that stuff comes, it flows back and forth.
And
I
to
hope
give
I
it
answered your
to
question
from.
because, I can go
No,
off.
you did. No, you did. Listen, I'm gonna tell you
We're
that
just
this
having a conversation, as you
what
said.
and that's the goal. That's the point though. This is so rich.
I moved it. Are you saying I moved it to adjust so I could sit a little different?
Oh, yeah, no. It don't worry about it, Doc. Listen, we
Okay, okay.
will do this, like, as we go on future things, we will make sure that everything is set and all that good stuff, but this
Okay.
conversation has been so rich, and there's so much more to unpack and so much more for us to talk, including the emotional wellness of our folks. Because I actually was quite literally, so that must be in the spirit. I was thinking about that this morning, like literally thinking about that
Mhm.
this morning. And just and thinking about with the just with everything that the current administration is doing, with the primary goal being the final destabilization of Black Americans. And the reality is that they won't ever be able to do it because they've never given us stabilization in the first place. Excuse me, every system that they dismantle, it really
Hello?
impacts other people who they consider minority, but because they hear DEI and associate it with Black, what you're really doing is, because Black
Just
folks have
black.
had to figure it out on their own. In any of it, so a whole
Yeah.
other thing. Doc, where can people find you? Where can people find more about your work? Find more about what it is. Like I said,
Mm.
we're definitely gonna have you back for some practical things,
Okay.
some other conversation,
Yeah.
like just
I've
because
enjoyed
this was
you.
amazing. This was amazing. And I
I
have this like
enjoyed you.
RSV recovery thing that I've been doing. So my whole season one of my podcast, I have been coughing intermittently in every episode. Yes.
Is it nerves or is just something?
No, I got sick. I got
Oh, okay.
my bonus son has a daughter, and we were taking care of her for a while, and she was at school at daycare. She's 2. And so she brought us all the cooties. And this last round of cooties she got us has like wiped me out for 3 weeks. And now I just have the remnants of it. So it's like a random cough every now and then.
Yeah, you gotta have all kind of stuff for them children that's at
Every
them.
time them little babies run up and we pick her from school, I'm Gigi. Okay, I'm too young to be anything else. I'm Gigi. And
Oh,
so she runs up and she's like, Gigi. And then the other little kids come and they got snotty nose and they like, me too. And I'm like, oh, like, oh my
yeah,
gosh.
you gotta come with the box of puffs, right?
And
Be
and
like,
and the sanitizing spray. Like I'm gonna be Lysol and a 2-year-old. Like, go over there.
okay,
But so anyway, tell us, where can we find you? So give us your website, your social media handles,
okay.
and all that good stuff.
Okay, so my website is, let me just think, because I won't say it wrong, but it's phoenix8lifesolutions.com. And then I am on Instagram, and I am doing an interview with somebody too on TikTok this Wednesday on TikTok. So I guess who am I? One Love, Phoenix One Love on TikTok. I
Yeah.
don't really do a lot of social media. I don't have time for that. I'm trying to live life. I'm trying to move overseas to go back to Panama because I went in January for 11 days. I'm getting ready to go back. Yes,
Hey,
yes.
might have to
I'm
have you
trying to
scoot over.
be I'm
We're
trying
gonna
to be
watch
one of them
Super.
expats or retirees in another country that makes sense and still, do a I think for me, I will probably always do a little light work
Yeah,
therapy,
absolutely.
with people, just helping people kind of reframe, some of their thoughts and, just think higher on a higher vibration to
Uh-huh.
really take control over your life because that's really the control that you have is the control over your own life. You know what I'm saying? By being accountable, being responsible, being loving, being patient and kind, giving yourself compassion instead of judgment, and I'll say this, stop chasing people and projects. You know what I'm saying? Because you
'Cause
gotta
that
learn. You gotta learn.
it keeps you on that outside seek.
Because people with high vibrations, healers and people with high vibrations usually are people that are ones that give all the energy. And I just
Mhm.
had this conversation. Somebody was just breaking down. I do all this, and I was like, "Well, who is the greatest healer of all time?" If you read the Bible, for those who believe, the Creator went into these spaces, healing, forming miracles, and all that, and loving on people, redeeming all the negative stuff that was in the atmosphere. And then when he left, they were we got a whole bunch of haters and people
And they went right back to the debauchery.
right back to it like as if you never did anything. So I always say you can do it, but do it in love and keep moving. And so that's really Nicole, the way I operate. I operate in high vibration love because I really do love people and I really do love myself. You know, it took me some time because it's a lot of us who are high sensitive people. And so when your emotions are all over the place, you have to learn how to balance your emotions. Because once you balance your emotions, baby, you know what I'm saying? You're good.
Then it
Okay.
becomes yours. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. I have had a wonderful time.
So it's phoenix8lifesolutions.com. And we're gonna
Yeah.
have all of this. We're gonna have links and everything posted in all the other places. So
Yeah.
phoenix8lifesolutions.com, where you guys can go and connect with Dr. Phoenix. I'm gonna tell you, she has been a godsend and a life send to my family.
But I just want to add, come to Dr. Phoenix when you're ready to go to the roots. Okay. Only. Because, I don't deal with the people in between.
Yes, this is true. More to come, guys. As always, you can find more about us and learn more about the work that Labels Be Gone is doing by visiting labelsbegone.com. You will be able to access the Permission Slip podcast on all major platforms here. Launch date, release details, all of that is coming soon. And as always, shameless plug, buy the book. It's not me, it's you. Take their labels off.
Get that book.
Get the book. And so, again, I'm Nicole Morris. I'm your host. I'm the author. I am the founder. And now I am signing off. Happy today.
On the next episode of The Permission Slip.
Like, I am no longer being that pillar for anybody but myself. I am no longer choosing people over me. I am now in my self-care season and choosing me season. So I'm no longer putting other people before me. I'm no longer over.
The Permission Slip podcast, now available on all major podcasting platforms.